Ladies and gentlemen. This is the Total Fitness Podcast. My name is Matthew,
I'm Walter.
and we are on week 21. So thank you for joining us this far. So today we are going to be talking about perception. So perception of your looks and how it relates to fitness. So can it affect your fitness level? Does it affect how you perceive yourself and what you can do in the gym or outside of the gym? This and that, as well as we're going to go a little bit deeper into look versus functionality. So the aesthetic versus functional strength or functional fitness. So we'll just dive right into it. So perception is, everybody who's been in fitness, there's always those times where you get to the gym and you may not be feeling your best. And you're like, I don't want to take my sweatshirt off today because, you don't feel you look as good. You might feel a little skinny. You might feel a little overweight that day or bloated or whatever it is. So you keep the sweatshirt on because if you took it off, all you'd be doing is constantly looking in the mirror and kind of getting, pushing yourself into a bit of a hole. And, for me at least, that definitely affects my workouts. Like if I'm feeling bad about something, like the way I'm looking at that point, it will definitely affect the fitness side of things, like the strength, the way I do the workout, the intensity of my workout, all that. So I definitely say it does affect fitness when it comes to how you view yourself.
And in terms of viewing yourself, I can't say that I disagree that much. I think that it's been an interesting experiment because of COVID, that I've not had a wall of mirrors in front of me.
Right.
And I have to be much more aware of how I'm working my muscles when I'm working out.
Right.
Instead of looking to see, am I doing this right and how do I look? I have to make sure, am I contracted? Is my back straight? Are my abs pulled in tight? Which is still a problem. So, I think in some respects, perception can be detrimental.
For sure.
If you're too busy looking at yourself to really feel what's happening with your body. Because communication is not just a matter of what you're seeing. And actually, I saw a really interesting podcast this morning that talked about the magic mirror, because there is a type of mirror that can actually show you what you look like, as opposed to the mirrors that we're used to seeing, which do everything backwards. And that when you see yourself in this thing, you're quite taken aback by the imperfections that you wouldn't have noticed otherwise.
Yeah, I've seen that experiment, and it's interesting. It's definitely interesting. But yeah, I mean, when you're just looking at it from a perception standpoint in terms of like how you're looking and how that can affect your workout, 100%, there's no doubt about it. That's pretty much just universal. Everybody, I feel, even people that are just starting in the gym, there's still those thoughts in the back of their head of, well, I don't know, am I too fat to be working out? Am I too skinny? Like, what if people judge me for messing up my form or using 10-pound weights instead of 100-pound weights, right? So it definitely does affect the fitness. Now, if we want to go a little deeper into that and say, does it affect your whole life? Then obviously it can. I mean, that it's very dependent person to person. Like for me, it did. There's certain things you would wear or not wear, or it literally consumed your life to the point of, all you could do was eat, sleep, drink, and you think about was that, right? So yeah, it definitely can affect people, and it definitely affects how you perform in the gym and how your body will perform. It's interesting. There's a few ex-Navy SEALs that have always said quotes like, I can't remember it's either David Goggins or one of the other guys, motivational ex-Navy SEAL. You only, when you reach your breaking point, you've only used like 40% of your willpower and your body and your mind and all that, right? That's the idea, is you hit what you think is your breaking point, but you still have 60% left to actually go until you're really hitting your breaking point. And I think that's kind of true, because there's days in the gym, when Walter and I work out, it's great because when you have a partner, I may quit at 12 because I'm like, oh, that's hard, and I'm feeling it. But then he's like, no, you're doing 10 more. I'm like, 10 more, and you start going. And then he's like, more, and you end up with 20 more reps.
Yeah.
So there's definitely that aspect of, if you're feeling good about yourself, if you actually, understand your body and you're mentally well, and, everything's connected, yeah, for sure. It definitely can improve your workouts and improve your fitness level. And then the backside of that is obviously, you know, if you're in by yourself and you're hating on yourself, 8 reps is hard, and you're like, you know what, today's not my day, and you just leave it at 8 reps.
It's very easy to give up that way.
Yeah.
And if at the same time you're not liking what you're seeing, what you're perceiving, then you're going to bring it down even further.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's a definite correlation the way I feel about myself just prior to a show, even though I'm hungry and I feel weak and all those things. But I look and I see something. Then when it's where we are now, where I don't see as much of a change yet, and I just don't, and I can do more, I'm stronger, I can do more, but I don't feel as good about myself. So
yeah,
that kind of perception as well is playing into it.
Yeah, for sure. So that's the first part, which obviously leads into the main portion of this podcast today. So we're going to do it a bit of a, one side versus the other. So the functionality versus the aesthetic. So Walter is going to take the side of functionality and why that should be the focus, or that is what, people should be worrying about. And I'm going to kind of do the devil's advocate of the look. And, the look is what people should be worried about, and, how that develops and how that can actually develop into a better relationship with your body. Okay. So that's kind of how we're going to do this things today. So if you want to get started, I mean, functionality, pretty much you can jump in.
I'm going to start with, functionality is king. I'm 63 years old, and a lot of people my age are worried more about functionality than they are about the aesthetics. And I think at a certain point, it becomes, what can I do? What is the longevity of this body going to be? How can I move? How can I do whatever I need to do? And certainly that is exacerbated by age. But if you can't move, looking good is not going to do anything for you.
Yeah.
A good facelift doesn't change the fact that you're still unable to move your face. So, or you're a dick. So, I think that, functionality should be the first and the primary consideration when you're dealing with exercise and nutrition, for that matter.
For sure, yeah. And I'll take the other side, the look. And I'm going to explain it in a way that sort of relates to the functionality. Young guys, like when I got into bodybuilding, I was like 16, right? 15, 16, whatever the age was. But it's always like you see these magazines where it's like, you got to look like this person. And obviously the mental sides of that they can be pretty damaging to anybody. However, when you're doing something for the aesthetic of it, like for bodybuilding, whatever it is, you're trying to push your body to the point of, what can I achieve that I've never been able to, and what people are telling me is impossible, or what, I thought was impossible, can I get to that point? So I look at it, when you're looking at, aesthetics versus functionality, right, whatever you want to call it, when you're looking at the aesthetics, it's kind of like, first off, you look great, plus you pushed your body and you've dedicated yourself enough to reach that point. It's not an easy thing to do. Along with that is you end up with, obviously, what is functionality? Functionality, if you're bending over, if you're squatting, a squat with a bar on your back, if you're doing, because you want good looking legs, you want big, good looking legs, you're going to squat. Is that any less functional if you're doing it for 20 reps, whereas if you're doing it for your, 20 reps for 200 pounds versus functionality and strength of 5 reps for 400 pounds, right? When you look at it that way, you're like, well, I mean, at the end of the day, you're still squatting and you're doing, you're using the muscle differently, but the functionality is still there. You're still squatting, you're still using the body properly. You're just going more for the aesthetic look of it versus being really strong. For some people, being really strong is king. What happens if car falls on you and you have to lift the car off, and the only way to do it is squat 400-pound car off your body? Horrible example.
Happens automatically.
Exactly. Right. So like, yeah, for sure. But at the end of the day, for somebody like me, I'm like, squatting 500 pounds is awesome. And it's something to achieve, yeah, but I would rather, I have different goals. If I want to look a certain way, the functionality to me would come a little bit second. Just because, again, I think it's more of that age difference, right? Okay. I'm not at the point, because you said something good, which was, what can I do? Right? I feel like when you're younger and you're, in that you're going for the aesthetic look, it's like, what can't I do? Almost, right? It's like because when you're young, you're dumb. You're trying to do, you're invincible. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I have two pec tears and a quad tear.
Well, I was going to be rude and say, so how are your quads? But you did it to yourself, so there you go.
Yeah. Well, that's it, right? It's like, I'm learning that functionality is definitely a more effective way of being healthier, but I don't think it's the only way of being, it's not fake muscle. You hear all the time, oh, those bodybuilders have fake muscle. No, they're still strong. They're not going to be as strong as somebody who's a powerlifter per se, or a CrossFit ex-athlete. They may not be able to run 10 miles, but they might be able to do 2 kilometers or 2 miles or whatever. But 10K. Thank you. Sorry, I said miles. 10K
every day.
But that's it. Walter does 10K. I can't do 10K. I can maybe do 2K to 5K before I really gas out. But that's just the style of training. I don't like running because functionality wise, I don't ever run in my daily life. So I mean, the only time I'd run is if somebody's chasing me down the street with a knife. Then yeah, that's obviously important to learn how to run. But hopefully, I'm fast enough and strong enough to overpower them. But whatever.
Godzilla.
Yeah. Back to the main point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I really do think it's more just a bit of the age, and we live in this society of, if you look good, you're going to achieve a lot. It's going to come easier, I should say. You still have to work for it, but it will come a little bit easier. And there's studies that have been actually shown that if you're a good-looking person, shit comes a little bit easier to you.
Yes, but we know what usually happens to the cheerleader and football player in high school by the time they reach 30.
That's true.
I think Springsteen wrote a song about that. Glory days.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that we're digressing here, but I think that you need to, unless you are in a sport as we are, and I mean, so I'm going against what I'm saying here because I do worry about the aesthetic to a certain extent, with the knowledge that my age does hold me back in certain respects.
Sure.
But age does change aesthetic in many, many ways. Ballet is for the young. Not all dance is for the young, but ballet with that particular aesthetic has to stop at a certain point.
Right.
You can't do those things. I think, I don't know how many 50-year-old, 60-year-old strong men there are, or Highland game guys. But again, it's not something that with a certain passage of time can be kept up.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get that, and also, and that's.
I can't scratch my back joke.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and that's true, right? When people think functionality when it comes to fitness, when I hear that word, I think functionality is like for a specific sport. Right? You see a lot of people on Instagram when they do functional fitness, and they'll do single leg, jump up onto a box, jump down into a backflip. I'm exaggerating, but that's what it is. It's like stuff you would never, ever do in your daily life. Yeah. And if you ever actually ended up doing that one thing, it would be because, again, you weren't paying attention on your phone walking across the street, and all of a sudden a biker and a car come at you at the same time, and you had to jump backwards and land with stability so you don't hurt yourself.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm looking at it at the way of, my body is still very functional. My body is a lot more functional than 95%, 99% of the world out there. Mm-hmm. Again, I still do train with HIIT, and I still train boxing, and I do stuff like that. But let's look at it if I was just doing bodybuilding, like what I used to do. that I still think I was functional enough because I could bend over, I could pick up a case of water, and I could move it 20 feet and place it back down, and I wouldn't injure myself. It would be easy enough to do. Plus, I'd look pretty good doing it. I don't have to train like Usain Bolt's doing. I mean, and he still has the aesthetic look, whatever. But I don't have to train that way because I'm not an Olympic sprinter. That my main goal in life is to get the gold medal at the Olympics.
Yeah.
He might be able to do that faster, but at the end of the day, it's the same movement. I'm still squatting down, lifting with my back and my legs and moving it over and placing it down. And, somebody who does bicep curls, it might actually help to curl it up a little bit. So my arms are a bit stronger because I go for the aesthetic look of having bigger arms.
Yeah.
So I think when you hear functionality versus look, I'm like, for me, I lean to the look side because I still view it as functional. Plus, you just look great.
Yeah.
You have that beach body model look, all that sort of stuff.
I think along those lines, I have to agree. But I think that it reaches a point where, well, what is looking good? Sure. Looking good for a bodybuilder in his 20s is not the same as looking good for a bodybuilder in his 50s.
Yeah.
60s. You look at those guys now, and the ones who have kept it up, because many don't, but they still have an aesthetic, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
Thing. But to me, functionality is getting rid of the frozen shoulder, dealing with the knee that gives out every time you start to bend down on the one side, not both sides.
Right.
So to become more functional is to fix those things so that at 70 you're not stuck with a walker. That's
sure. That's a good point to bring up because definitely a lot of people that again go for the aesthetic look and all that. Like look at Rich Piana, for example. For those who don't know Rich Piana, he was this amazing bodybuilder. That's the key word, was. He was an amazing bodybuilder who passed 5-6 years ago, unfortunately. But if you ever watched any of his YouTube videos, and he was a big popular YouTuber, he didn't advocate, sorry. He just said, don't do it, but this is what I did to get this look. And he did a lot of supplements. He put his body through hours and hours of training in the gym every single day, like 4 or 5 hours. He would basically kill himself to get ready for these shows. It worked for him. I mean, he never got pro. Like, he was always like second because there was always that one guy who just did 5 hours instead of 4 hours, right? He looked amazing, though. However, one of his best body parts, his legs, he trained them so much, and he did the same static movements of leg press, hack squats. He did it with heavy weight. He would do it with maybe less than stellar form. And, when he was making these YouTube videos after he retired from bodybuilding, he was around 40, 45, somewhere in there. His knee wouldn't hold up anymore. So the once great body part he had, they're still good. They were still big. But he couldn't do what he used to do. He couldn't squat properly. He could only do a leg press. And that leg press, instead of 12 plates, is now 5 plates. And it has to be a lot more reps. And the second he feels that twinge in his knee, he's not able to do it anymore. So that's a great point to bring up because, a lot of people, especially around my age, we just kind of ignore the injuries. We ignore that twinge in our shoulder. We ignore the pain in our knee because we're invincible. We think, we would fall asleep on floor with our head twisted one way and our body twisted the other way, wake up in the morning with no pain. Then one day you wake up and you're like, holy shit, why can't I actually move? Like, it never used to be like this. Yeah. And it's funny because my dad would always joke, like, and when you reach my age, you're going to be feeling this, he would turn his head wrong or something. He's like, like from boxing, he punched or something. And he'd say, like when I was your age, I wouldn't even worry about this. I would be, I would feel it. And then the next day I would be back to squatting in the gym, no pain, punching the bag, all that. But then he's like, well, just wait until you get to my age. Because I would laugh at him. And then, I'm not even close to his age. This is like 5 years later, and I'm already starting to feel that effects of my body's wearing down a little bit because I'm not doing the right things. However, it's not going to stop me from trying to look the best I can.
And that's fine. I think we've reached a consensus that there's nothing wrong with looking as good as you can,
Mm-hmm.
but make sure your form is good.
Absolutely.
You know? And then you remain functional.
Yeah. Again, so like the way
what it says.
But that's, yeah, I mean, the functionality is very important, but I think people get that word mixed up. You know, if you train like a bodybuilder, it doesn't mean you're not functional. I think people get that confused. You know, just because you're not doing single leg jump squats doesn't mean you're not functional. It just means you're not doing single leg jump squats.
If you train like an over enthusiastic, not thinking properly bodybuilder, then you will suffer the consequences.
Yeah.
But there are plenty of us who do things properly, who worry about form, who say that squat was shit. Maybe I should take a plate off.
Yeah.
Get it right again.
That squat was shit. Put more weight on.
No, that's it used to be.
It used to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Like, well, I'll talk about my. I don't think I've ever talked about my quads here on here. I've always squatted with good form, but I've always ignored twinges in my quads, my hamstrings, my glutes, or anything. So any tightness or pain, it wasn't pain, I would say. It was just like, it was tightness and maybe a bit of a pull here and there. I always ignored it. I was like, I'm squatting with good form. I got the weight up. I'm just tight because I haven't stretched in a week. And that was always my excuse. I was like, I haven't stretched in a week. It's just tight. What's the worst that could happen? Well, you tear your quad. That's the worst that could happen. I got lucky, and I was only off squatting for 6 months. We have a friend, I guess, who ended up squatting or just tore both her quad and hadn't squatted in 2 years. Right? So I got off lucky from that. And that's kind of the thing. Sometimes, you know, you have to get injured, and that's the smack in the head that you need to wake up. But hopefully this will kind of give people a reason to wake up.
Sometimes if the other guy gets injured, that could also be your lesson.
Yeah.
To go into the other side of my life, I was talking to a youngster in the program earlier today who heard about a friend who died from alcohol and was very upset about that. And it was like, do you know what the percentages are? Do you know that maybe that's the example that you don't want to follow so that doesn't happen to you? And I mean, when we see someone doing something wrong in the gym, who's not one of our good friends and a bodybuilder, we notice it immediately and we think we should talk to those people.
Yeah.
But if the same guy is doing it, who is a friend and is a bodybuilder, is built, then we keep our mouth shut.
Yeah.
And they can make their own mistakes. And that in itself, that's wrong on our part. But it also is a sign that when you get big, you still have to pay attention.
Yeah.
You know?
That's with anything, right? You just transfer that logic or transfer that reasoning and thought to anywhere in life. If you're driving down the street, just because you've driven down that same road 100 times doesn't mean a kid could come out of the driveway at any second.
Exactly.
And run across the street. Right? You always have to be paying attention to what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right? So I guess the consensus after all this is, yeah, it's okay to look great and train for the look, as long as your training is functional and you are using proper form. Can we agree on that?
Turn it around. If you train intelligently, with proper form, in a functional manner, you will look great.
Yeah, I guess that's a better way to word it, isn't it?
Yeah.
I guess I lost this one. Yeah, no, that's perfect, right? I think it's Brett Contreras that said this recently on Instagram or Twitter. You know, if you focus on the strength and the functionality of your body, the body will come. If you just focus on the body, unfortunately, it may not come. Right? You might get lucky
because you're also going to judge it too much.
Well, that's it.
You're going to be happy because you're also going.
Right. So that's it. Be intelligent, train functionally, train with great form, and you will get the body. You will get the aesthetics.
Yeah.
Unless you're lucky and, you know, hit the jackpot with 1 in a billion genetics, and you can literally do the shittiest form of a push-up, and boom, you Mr. Olympia.
Yeah, and then you'll probably get hit by a bus. Karma. Balance.
Yeah. The universe has to balance. Thanos said something similar, right? Yeah. Anyways, that's it for today. That's it, actually. Yeah. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. What Walter and I have actually wanted to do is kind of what we did today. We kind of want to do the counterpoint and counterpoint argument, like do argument counterpoint. So, for example, even if we both agree with the same point, we want to make the counterpoints because we feel you guys kind of engage better with that, because it's always nice to see both sides of the story, right? So if you guys did enjoy this, please leave a comment below. As well, we are doing a Q&A next week. So if you can, we have a few questions that I completely forgot to save on the Total Fitness page. So resend those in. So we have we have Instagram, Facebook, and the YouTube comments, or just message Walter or myself directly. Just ask our questions. And that's it. We want to keep it to about 4 to 5 questions so we can go a bit in depth with them. We don't want to go anything, we don't want to go crazy long, like an hour-long podcast. So if you want to just ask us a decent question, by all means, go ahead. We'll answer.
I would also say, as you know, we're doing this thing where we're prepping for a show on the 26th of September. We're giving you lots of extra information and lots of stuff on the way. Please comment about that. If you have questions about it, anything like that, let us know. If you need us to go deeper with something or improve the sound quality, who knows? Anything like that, let us know. It's the only way it's going to get better.
Awesome, guys. Thank you very much for watching. See you next week.
See you later, guys.